What's cracking, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some acid techno, and indeed, I'm actually going to redo an early video that I did for two reasons. One, I didn't mention this, or I actually mentioned it in one of my video descriptions. I don't think I've talked about it yet. But the videos that I've downloaded from my other channel that were hosted on YouTube, they've been compressed, meaning all the videos as I originally uploaded them were 1080p and 256 kps. For audio, and now that I've re-downloaded them, they're 720p, and I think it's like 128 kps, which I don't really understand why that happened. Again, for the mixes, I can just redo them because I have all the proper audio for all my mixes, so I can redo all those, which is a little annoying, but regardless, the reaction videos, it's just going to be the reality. But there were some reaction videos I did in the early days where I felt I was a bit too verbose, a bit too loquacious, or at the very least, I just kept pausing the tune instead of just kind of finding the right moments, you know, when it's a bit more stripped down to kind of insert a comment. And the reaction I did for the very first Skankadelic release, and in particular the track I Am an Acid Junkie by Mr. Burns, with Geezer on the engineer. Oh no, it's a Mr. Burns and Geezer tune, that's right. Mr. Burns and the Geezer basically constitute the catalog of the label, often in conjunction as Mr. Burns and the Geezer. Sometimes it's just Mr. Burns, but even then it makes the point that Geezer was engineering. So, you know, this is their label, or this label is their sound. But like I said, I reacted to I Am an Acid Junkie before, but the video was like, it was like 25 minutes long or something, so I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to be a bit more concise and to the point. So I mentioned it in the original video, I mentioned it in the nice acid / raptor reaction that I did, which was a bit more tidy, so I'm going to keep that one and post it up here eventually. Nevertheless, I did mention this is one of my all-time favorite labels. It only ran for a short period of time. It was like late 03 to 06. And again, it falls into that middle period. It's not the glory days of the 90s. It's not the modern period. And I do think, as I mentioned, you know, to me, Geezer kind of has sort of three phases that I hear in the evolution of his acid techno sound. This is sort of the middle phase. Heavy kick drums, really thumping sort of sound, really kind of like warbly acid transformer acid work, as I sometimes call it. But this tune, I Am an Acid Junkie, really kicks off the label perfectly, and it really captures the sound which the label would then pursue different variations of and ultimately perfect to my mind. I honestly think this label is just about perfect. Like, all the releases are worth owning. I mentioned before, I think maybe The Weak Link is number 8, but even then there's a tune on it called When Push Comes to Shove by Geezer. It's fantastic. So like I said, I don't think there's a single one that's not worth owning. My understanding is that it grew out of a club night called Skankadelic that Mr. Burns, aka Gavin Butler, was playing at. He wanted to start a label that would make tunes of the type of acid techno that he was trying to play in his DJ sets. So we contacted Guy McGaffer, they struck up a studio partnership, and for the next few years put out a bunch of amazing tunes, primarily on Skankadelic, but they also did remixes for Stay Up Forever and for Smitten is Dead. And they also appeared a couple times on Mr. Burns' slightly more techno-oriented, although not entirely without acid, Blipped label, which I've also reacted to a tune from, though again, I don't think it's up on my new channel yet. I'll have to get it up eventually. I mean, I have like 400 videos that have never been on this channel that were techno and, you know, acid techno and so on, reactions on the other channel. So I'm not going to just like dump them all onto the new channel at once, especially because a lot of the people who've started interacting with the new channel are also into like punk rock and some other things, so I'm gonna like space them out, but I will try to get the old Skankadelic reactions up as soon as possible. Someone mentioned in the comments that they wouldn't mind to see some Skank reactions, and I was like, hey, I do have some already, so for that reason I'm gonna try to get them up here as well. They did also mention like an organ grinder tune. I was like, hey, I have reacted to Squat Rock, so I'm gonna get that up there too. Nevertheless, I did want to point out in the run out groove for this one, Skankadelic 1, it says the start of something good. It's like, you won't be able to see it, but in the run out groove there it says the start of something good, and I love that because it absolutely was. This label is priceless. Like, I am so happy to own all 15 records. It took me the longest to get the last one, number 15, which is, it's listed as a Burns and Geezer release, but I did notice in the notes for that one, it just says produced and engineered by Geezer. So yeah, whatever. The point is, that one took me the longest to get, though I don't actually think it's the best. I do think the nice Acid Raptor one is the best. Nevertheless, here we go. This is I Am an Acid Junkie by Mr. Burns and the Geezer. Is this 2003? I think it is, right? Whoa, look out. Yes, 2003 on Skankadelic Sounds, and this was indeed the start of something good. Obviously, there's a few things going on right away. We have this kind of rattly percussion rhythm. We have this sort of synthed out techno duck with this rhythmic quack. And we have that, again, mid-period Geezer's kick drum, deep and thumping. But, you know, this label has a few things that I regard as its essential characteristics. One is just torrents of acid. This is an acid lover's label as much as any other. Number two, the structure. There tends to be long, very DJ-friendly intros, as the one we're hearing now. You know, where you get like 128 or more before the first like secondary intro. Before the secondary intro. And you get what I call acid write-outs, and indeed this label is what made me sort of coin that phrase in my brain, which is to say right at the end, as we go into the outro, the primary outro, you'll get this section like really sort of highlighted and emphasized where the acid will kind of flare up, and it does what it's been doing for a lot of the track, but it'll do it in a more acute and kind of like rip-roaring way as the track is on the way out the door. So again, it made me call that section an acid write-out, and pretty much every Skankadelic has one. So here we go. Secondary intro has begun. The real acid bass guns have begun. Synth out techno duck still giving us the rhythmic bellwether. That little acid flare-up at the end lets you know the sort of acid madness that awaits. Okay, so you hear the like this acid transformer, like warbly supportive layer. And then below it is that like engine, right? Keyed it all up. The lower end and the transformer warbles. And all the while that rattly percussive rhythm really gives texture to the rest of the tune. I do love that. It was sort of syncopated, but it was also like, I think it panned left, right, or at the very least it was like open, close, as it went into the next measure. And again, the acid transformers are now like level 3. 4. When I get excited, I start spilling tea. It happens. Level 5? We're at DEFCON 5, sir. Again, it's an acid lover's label. I didn't even know there was a DEFCON 6. That high layer just singing out. Meanwhile, that low motor is still just doing its blue-collar work. That time it had a little, you know, a little roll and syncopation leading into the measure change, but it didn't do that like open-close left-right thing. variation in the measure flourishes. I love it. Another thing about Skankadelic tunes is the breakdowns. It's like the acid will slither like hot up, and then there's that, you know, there's still that sort of synth duck, but there's also this metallic like it came right at the break there, but also I love that, like, you know, the acid kind of like vaporized, like upward, brief dead pause, that metallic synth, and then it all drops back in. I hadn't realized the metallic synth was really hitting on the measure changes until just now, but yeah, that's where it's doing its damage. High percussion doing work. Yo. Acid birds chirping out. But now riding back down a little bit. Compare the, now the high percussion, it's like, it's kind of phasing up, phasing out, phasing up, phasing out. And all the while, the acid transformers just sending out their signals across the sky. Which is funny because, you know, I mentioned the acid ride out. That last part was the acid ride out, but it's not. I think they sort of worked into what would become the sort of real telltale acid ride out, because by the time you get to like Skank 4, 5, 6 especially, it's like, to my mind, one of the main features of the tune, whereas there, like, it felt like an intensification, but it wasn't like, oh my god, the acid just decided to like break out of the box, like what? But again, the start of something good, not the full articulation of something good. But again, what hell of a way to start a label, to put people on notice, like, yo, this is a new acid-techno label, we have a very particular sound in mind, it's a screaming acid sound, it's an acid blubber sound, it's a heavy techno sound. I believe the original Skankadelic Club was based in Banbury, I think. I don't know much about the Banbury area, someone shout it out if you do, but I believe that's correct. I used to have one of the records I got, it came with like a Skankadelic sticker, and I had an old record cabinet that was placed very prominently on, and then when I moved, it had sort of become a little rickety, and I couldn't bring it with me, and I ended up just, you know, scrapping it, which made me sad, because there were a lot of good stickers on there that, you know, once you put a sticker on something, you can't get it back. But yeah, I did love the end of that tune. Again, it's a very sort of like prominent moment expressed through that, again, sort of metallic synth that really started to make a big impact on me about halfway through the tune, which is funny because when I reacted to this the first time, I talked about the acid transformers, I talked about the structure of Skankadelic tunes, I talked about the heavy kick drum, I talked about the acid ride out, but I don't remember that sort of clangy metallic synth right at the measure transitions really hitting me as notably. So that did stand out this time. So interesting. You know, there's a few other reactions that I decided not to get the downloads of, and some of them were I did 4 different versions of The Rabbit's Name Was. The original, then the Chris Needs remix, that is, you know, to my mind, sort of the most epic and insane one ever. The Laurie Dirty Thumper one, and then eventually, what was it, like the 2014 remix? I'm trying to remember what year it was, but it was the one that came like much later. And I think it was it Chris and Geezer, I think? Nevertheless, all those videos were plagued by the same issue that I mentioned before. I just kept, like, instead of finding moments in the track to talk, I kept interrupting it. And, you know, the one with the Chris Needs reaction, now I wanted to talk about that one more, because that one goes way back for me. That's as much of a Shnootz roots as any track is, because it was one of the first acid techno tunes I heard. It's the first tune on Sound of Acid Core Volume 1, which I mentioned the first 2 volumes of that were very crucial to getting me into acid techno and acid trance. But yeah, basically, I wanted to talk about that one more, but that video was like over 30 minutes long, so there's no way I'm going to post that. I have to redo all those, so I did want to go back and do this, and it was enjoyable because it actually hit me a little bit differently than it did the first time. So yeah, expect reactions and a tidier, maybe more concise form for all of the versions of The Rabbit's Name Was by A&E Department. So yeah, I'm definitely going to go back and do those, but I got more Skankadelic reactions coming. Not only a couple that I've reacted to on my old channel that I think are still good, and they came a little bit later when I was learning how to do these videos a little bit better. So those will come up on my channel soon. Look out for those. But I also will have some new ones coming. I did mention when the person commented that they wouldn't mind seeing a Skankadelic reaction, that I was like, you know what, I've done a few, but I might want to do one from the final Skankadelic release, Skank 15, maybe the WWW track. So maybe look out for that one soon. In any case, I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you have any comments, any requests or suggestions. Always looking for feedback. I do appreciate the people watching and listening. Have a good day. Have a good night. I'll see you next time. Peace.